You know the feeling. It's 2 a.m. and you're lying in bed with your eyes open, watching the ceiling fan make slow circles in the dark. And in your mind, you're somewhere else entirely. You're standing on a stage. You're holding the book you wrote. You're living in the apartment with the big windows. You're finally the person you've always known you could be. And then, morning comes. And you hit snooze. Not once, 4 times. You scroll. You make coffee. You sit at your desk and you open the document, the application, the email draft, and you stare. You stare at the blinking cursor like it's mocking you. Because it is. You are ambitious. Deeply, painfully ambitious. Your dreams are not small. They never have been. You can see your future self so clearly, it's almost like a memory. You've rehearsed your success story in your head 1,000 times. You know exactly who you want to become. But here's the truth you don't say out loud. You're not moving toward it. You're stuck. Frozen. Paralyzed in the exact same place you were 6 months ago, a year ago, maybe longer. You are lazy, but ambitious. And that paradox is quietly destroying you. Because here's what nobody tells you about this particular kind of suffering. It's not that you don't care. It's that you care too much. You care so much that the gap between where you are and where you want to be has become an open wound. And every day you don't move closer, that wound gets deeper. You're not lazy because you don't have dreams. You're stuck because the dreams are so big, so vivid, so perfect in your mind, that the reality of starting feels like desecration, like ruining something beautiful by making it real. So you wait, you plan, you think, you refine the vision, and you never begin. This is the psychology of the ambitious procrastinator, the dreamer who never moves, the person with a vision so clear it blinds them to the only thing that actually matters, the next small step. And the thing that's protecting you, this perfectionism, this waiting for readiness, this preservation of potential, is the very thing keeping you trapped.
Let's be precise about what's actually happening in your nervous system when ambition and inaction collide. What you're experiencing is called Approach-Avoidance Conflict, a psychological state where you're simultaneously drawn toward a goal and repelled by it. The ambition pulls you forward, the fear pushes you back, and you end up vibrating in place, burning energy without movement, like a car with the gas and brake pressed at the same time. But beneath that conflict is something deeper, ego depletion through anticipatory anxiety. Your brain is running simulations of failure constantly. Every time you think about starting, your mind floods with images of inadequacy, embarrassment, wasted effort. Your default mode network, the brain's introspective self-referential system, becomes hyperactive, generating elaborate narratives about all the ways this could go wrong. You're exhausted before you even begin because you've already lived through 100 imagined failures. This is compounded by what psychologists call temporal discounting, the tendency to devalue future rewards in favor of immediate comfort. Your rational mind knows that working now will lead to success later. But your limbic system, the ancient emotional brain, only understands now. And right now, scrolling is easier than struggling. Resting is safer than risking. Dreaming is more pleasant than doing. Here's where it gets more complex. For many people stuck in this pattern, there's an underlying attachment to potential identity. The psychologist Tara Brach describes this as the trance of unworthiness. But in your case, it's inverted. It's the trance of unlived worthiness. As long as you haven't tried and failed, you can still believe you're capable of greatness. Your potential remains pure, untested, infinite. The moment you actually start, you risk discovering you're not as talented as you thought, not as capable, not as special. So you protect the fantasy by never testing it. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung had a concept he called the Provisional Life, the person who lives as if they're always preparing for real life to begin. They're always on the verge, always about to. They treat their current existence as a waiting room for their true life. But the waiting room becomes the life. And here's what makes this pattern so insidious. Society rewards potential. We celebrate the gifted child, the promising talent, the person with so much ahead of them. But we rarely talk about what happens when that potential curdles into pressure. When the label of smart or talented becomes a cage. When you're so afraid of losing your status as the one with potential that you never risk turning potential into reality. This is the dark side of ambition without action. It becomes a defense mechanism, a way to feel superior without ever proving it, a way to maintain a grandiose self-image without subjecting it to the humiliation of reality.
The grief of this pattern is invisible. That's what makes it so lonely. You're mourning a life you haven't lived, grieving opportunities that passed while you were getting ready. And nobody sees it, because from the outside, you look fine. You look like someone with their whole life ahead of them. But inside, you're haunted by the growing gap between who you are and who you know you could have been. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." He was writing about death, but he could have been writing about this, the slow death of potential. The way years disappear while you wait to feel ready, while you wait for inspiration, while you wait for the perfect moment. But here's the existential truth you're avoiding. There is no perfect moment. There is no version of you that will arrive fully formed, free of fear, bursting with confidence and clarity. That person doesn't exist. The only person who exists is you, right now, with all your doubt and mess and unreadiness. And the cruel irony is that by waiting to become that perfect person, you're preventing that person from ever emerging, because growth doesn't happen in the planning. It happens in the doing, in the failure, in the awkward, uncomfortable, imperfect action. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard called this the sickness unto death. Not physical death, but the despair of not willing to be yourself, of living in possibility without actuality. He wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur very quietly in the world as if it were nothing at all." And that's what's happening. You're losing yourself quietly, in the space between your dreams and your days. The core fear beneath all of this is simple. What if I try and discover I'm ordinary? That fear complicates everything. It makes rest feel like laziness. It makes relaxation feel like betrayal. Because if you're not actively moving toward greatness, you're wasting your potential. Every moment of ease becomes evidence of your failure. Every Netflix episode, every lazy Sunday, every choice to do something simple and human instead of something productive, it all gets added to the ledger of your inadequacy. You can't enjoy the small pleasures of life because you haven't earned them yet. And you can't pursue the big dreams because you're terrified of what failure would mean. So you exist in limbo, in the purgatory between stillness and movement, judging yourself constantly, but never actually testing yourself, feeling guilty for resting, but too afraid to work. This is the exhaustion of the ambitious procrastinator, not the exhaustion of effort, but the exhaustion of perpetual internal conflict. So what does this actually look like in your adult life? How does this pattern show up in the daily texture of existence? You might be someone who collects courses but never finishes them, who has 17 browser tabs open with articles about starting a business, learning a language, building a portfolio, but who never actually starts. You consume content about change instead of creating change. You study other people's success like it's a spectator sport. You might be someone who talks about your dreams constantly, but only in vague, future tense language. I'm going to write a book. I'm planning to start a company. I want to get in shape. But the verbs are always future. The action is always coming. Tomorrow, next week, when things settle down, when you feel more ready. They become adults who have incredibly high standards for themselves, but can't tolerate the gap between their current skill level and their vision. So they quit before they start, or they start and abandon projects the moment they're not immediately excellent. They'd rather preserve the fantasy of what they could create than confront the reality of what they're creating. You might be someone who experiences crippling shame spirals after unproductive days. You go to bed feeling like a failure. You wake up determined to change, and by noon, you're right back in the same patterns, watching yourself repeat behaviors you swore you'd stop. The shame doesn't motivate you, it paralyzes you. It confirms the narrative you're trying to escape, that you're a fraud, that your ambition is a lie you tell yourself. In relationships, this pattern manifests as a need to be seen as impressive without being truly known. You want people to see your potential, your intelligence, your vision, but you keep them at a distance from your actual life, from the mess, from the unfinished projects and the broken promises to yourself. You fear that if people saw who you really are, stuck, inconsistent, struggling, they'd realize you're not special. At work, you're the person with ideas who never follows through. Or you're the one who takes on projects with enthusiasm and then ghosts when they get difficult. You might be brilliant in short bursts, but incapable of sustained effort. You start strong and fade fast. Every new beginning feels like redemption, and every middle feels like proof of your inadequacy. Your relationship with your own body reflects this conflict. You either neglect it entirely because basic self-care feels trivial compared to your big goals, or you oscillate between extreme discipline and complete collapse, all or nothing, perfection or chaos. No middle ground. Your internal identity is fractured. There's the person you are in your daydreams, confident, accomplished, admired, and there's the person you are in reality, stuck, scrolling, starting tomorrow. And the gap between those two selves is where you live, in the ache of the distance, in the fantasy of reunion. But here's what's crucial to understand. These behaviors are not evidence of laziness. They're evidence of a coping mechanism, a protection strategy. Your nervous system learned somewhere along the way that trying and failing is more dangerous than not trying at all. Maybe you were praised for being smart instead of working hard. Maybe your worth was tied to achievement. Maybe failure was met with disappointment or shame. So you learned to keep your potential theoretical, to live in the safety of someday. And the first step in unlearning this pattern is not to shame yourself for it. It's to witness it, to see it clearly, to understand that you're not broken, you're stuck in a strategy that once made sense but no longer serves you. Awareness doesn't fix everything. But it's the beginning, because you can't change a pattern you can't see. And once you see it, once you really see how you've been using inaction as a shield, you can start to make different choices. Not perfect choices, not dramatic transformations, just different, just slightly braver, just one small step closer to the person you keep promising yourself you'll become. So how do you actually begin to heal this split between who you are and who you dream of being? First, you have to do something uncomfortable. You have to grieve. You have to let yourself feel the sadness of the time you've lost, the opportunities that passed, the versions of yourself you could have been if you'd started sooner. You don't bypass this grief. You don't positive thinking your way through it. You sit with it. You let it move through you. Because only after the grieving can you start building. Second, you redefine what starting means. For you, starting is not launching the finished product. Starting is opening the document. It's writing one bad sentence. It's doing 5 minutes of the thing. You have to radically lower the bar for what counts as action. Because your perfectionism has set the bar so high that you're paralyzed. So you make it small. Laughably small, humiliatingly small, and you do it anyway. Third, you begin the practice of nervous system regulation, because your body is stuck in a state of threat whenever you think about your goals.
You need to teach your system that action is safe, that imperfection is survivable. This might look like breath work before you start a task. It might look like somatic practices that help you stay in your body instead of spiraling into your head. It might look like literally saying out loud, "I am safe even if this is bad." Fourth, you engage in what psychologists call self-compassion, but not the soft affirmational version, the fierce kind. The kind that says, "I see that you're scared, I see that this is hard, and I'm not going to let you hide anymore." You parent yourself through the discomfort instead of abandoning yourself to it. Fifth, you practice identity flexibility. You stop clinging to the image of who you think you need to be, and you start experimenting with who you actually are. You try things badly. You suck at new skills. You let people see you in the messy middle. And you notice that the sky doesn't fall, that your worth doesn't evaporate, that you're still you, even when you're not impressive. And finally, you choose softness over survival mode. You stop treating rest like the enemy. You stop commodifying every moment. You let yourself be a person who has a body and needs sleep and enjoys small things. You release the belief that you have to earn your existence through achievement. The writer James Baldwin once said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." This is what facing looks like. Not fixing, not optimizing, not hacking your way to productivity, just seeing the pattern clearly. Seeing how you've been protecting yourself with inaction, and choosing, gently, to try something different. The goal is not to become someone who never struggles. It's not to eliminate fear or doubt or the temptation to give up. The goal is to become someone who acts anyway, who moves even when it's uncomfortable, who values imperfect action over perfect inaction. You don't need to be fixed. You were never broken. You just learned a strategy for protecting yourself that stopped working. And now you get to learn a new one that honors both your ambition and your humanity, one that lets you dream big and start small, one that makes space for both the vision and the stumbling steps toward it. Your potential is not wasted. It's just waiting for you to stop protecting it and start using it, waiting for you to stop rehearsing your life and start living it. The person you've been dreaming of becoming, they don't exist in some distant future where everything is perfect. They exist in the moment you decide to stop waiting and